$75 million, by far the most ever spent on a documentary, and it's going to be released by Disney on Earth Day, April 22nd, and it really creates an emotional connection with the task of saving the world ocean. And I don't know if Scripps would be interested in being involved in the action program that Jeff and his team always launch in connection with one of their projects, but I wanted to recommend that very highly. So, on this occasion, we celebrate the 100th anniversary of Roger Revelle's birth, almost exactly. And it is a year that is rich in anniversaries. This is the 50th year of the key decision which resulted in the establishment of the University of California, San Diego, which was an idea formed and pushed by Roger Revelle. We are now in the second 50-year period of the measurements that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But it is also the 150th anniversary of John Tyndall's discovery that CO2 intercepts infrared radiation, which was the first scientific discovery that formed the basis of the concern that Roger Revelle first voiced in a very clear and eloquent way. It is the 200th anniversary year of Charles Darwin, whose work still evokes the kind of controversy one would hope wouldn't be continuing. It's a little daunting for those of us who face a headwind with respect to the science of global warming. But it is also, and this is the last anniversary I'll mention because I want to use it as a taking off point for what I learned from Roger Revelle. It is the 400th anniversary of the first demonstration by Galileo Galilei of the telescope, which had been invented in the Netherlands 1 year prior in 1608, and his improved version made it possible for Galileo not only to see the rings of Saturn and the moons of Jupiter, but to confirm with observational and undeniable evidence the mathematical construct that was first put forward 66 years prior I believe that's right, 1543, by Copernicus with the publication in the year of his death of the Revolution of the Spheres. Copernicus did not get into trouble with the medieval church because, as legend has it, he first saw the copy of his published book as it came off the press as he died. So he didn't really serve as a target for the ire that later was focused on Galileo. But it's worth revisiting briefly what the central insight from Copernicus was that was later validated by Galileo. He said, and I'm translating this into terms that make sense to me, he said, if you go outside and look up at the sky, it does appear that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and therefore gives the impression that the sun goes around the earth. Of course, he demonstrated why that was not true, but if you look at the actual language of his argument, he relied a great deal on the difference in the distance from the surface of the earth to the top of the sky compared to the distance from the earth itself to the sun, so that the apparent motion of the sun was very different from the actual relationship of the sun's motion and the earth's rotation. And he said in that work, the Earth moves in 2 dimensions. It rotates and it orbits the sun. And because of that vast difference in the distance of these 2 relative distances, the perspective afforded us by human unaided observations is misleading. And he was able, through the use of mathematics and his brilliant mind, to demonstrate the entire true construct of the solar system. When Galileo demonstrated his telescope in the salons of Milan and showed people the evidence that clearly demonstrated the truth of this construct, it became, if you will forgive the phrase, an inconvenient truth. He was persecuted and put under house arrest and forced to recant. Now, the reason why that example from 400 years ago is relevant to the issue of the climate crisis is that, in a very real way, the same difference between the unaided observations of the human eye compared to the scientific measurements that Roger Revelle and then Dave Keeling actually put to paper is very similar. If we walk outside and look up at the sky, it seems like a vast and limitless expanse. But from the perspective of space, we are able to see that in relationship to the Earth itself, the thickness of the Earth's atmosphere is roughly 1/1000th the thickness of the Earth itself. And as a consequence, what we think of as a vast space invulnerable to our insults is actually the thinnest and most vulnerable component of the Earth's ecological system. It was that insight, wrapped in many others, that Roger Revelle gave to me when I was a young student, an undergraduate, walking into a class outside my major field of concentration. And I watched and listened to this great man. And it was apparent to me from the first day all the way through the end of that course that this was not an ordinary man. He had an intensity of focus and a brilliance that was truly extraordinary. I can see him right now standing at the blackboard and drawing essentially the exact same graph that I have repeated thousands of times, first of all with respect to population, and then the first few years of the observational data on the rising concentrations of CO2 in the Earth's atmosphere. And he had an ability to see the large patterns and project them far into the future. From my standpoint, as I have watched with great respect and awe as the scientific community in this world has worked so diligently for all these years, and especially for the last 2 decades under the auspices of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, or IPCC, from my perspective, they've been filling in the dots in the pattern that Roger Revelle made clear a long, long time ago. He himself would not say it that way. But for me, that is the experience that I have had. He made it clear. He, first of all, put it in the context of population because he had most recently, in the years immediately prior to his teaching of this course at Harvard, been immersed in population studies. but his mind roamed and ranged across so many